The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Ray's gas station, on the outskirts of Denver, when Marcus Webb heard the distinctive sputter of a dying Harley-Davidson engine. At 52, with weathered hands and eyes that had seen too much, Marcus looked up from the cardboard mat where he'd been sitting, his military-issue duffel bag serving as his pillow for the past 3 months. The motorcycle limped into the lot, its rider a burly man in leather vest covered with patches, his face twisted in frustration. The engine coughed once more before dying completely, leaving the biker stranded 20 feet from the pump. Marcus stood slowly, his left leg stiff from an IED blast in Fallujah that still haunted his dreams. He approached cautiously, knowing that his appearance, tattered army jacket, unkempt beard, and worn boots held together with duct tape, often made people uncomfortable. "Sounds like your fuel pump's gone," Marcus offered quietly. The biker, who introduced himself as Jake Morrison, looked up with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "You know bikes?" "Was a mechanic in the Marines," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in Jake's eyes. 16 years. Kept our vehicles running through 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. Jake studied him for a long moment, taking in the faded service patches still visible on Marcus's jacket. His expression softened slightly. "You military?" "Was. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Webb, retired." The word retired tasted bitter. Discharged was more accurate, sent home with a Purple Heart, untreated PTSD, and medical bills that had swallowed his savings faster than enemy fire had taken his friends. "Can you fix it?" Jake asked, hope creeping into his voice. "I'm supposed to meet my chapter in Colorado Springs tonight. It's a memorial ride for fallen veterans." Marcus knelt beside the Harley, running his hands over the engine with the familiarity of a man greeting an old friend. "I can try. Ray lets me use his tools sometimes if I sweep up." He paused, meeting Jake's eyes. "But I should tell you up front. I can't pay for parts." "I've got money for parts," Jake said quickly. "Can you really fix it?" "Give me an hour." What happened next would change Marcus Webb's life forever, though he had no way of knowing it as he lost himself in the mechanical puzzle before him. His hands, steadier around engine parts than they ever were when trying to sleep, moved with practiced precision. He'd forgotten how good it felt to fix something, to take broken pieces and make them whole again. Jake watched in growing amazement as Marcus diagnosed the problem. Not just the fuel pump, but a clogged fuel line and a loose connection that would have caused problems down the road. "You weren't kidding about knowing bikes." "Harleys were my specialty," Marcus said, not looking up from his work. "Had a '68 Sportster once. Sold it when my daughter needed braces." His voice caught slightly. He hadn't seen his daughter in 4 years, not since his ex-wife got the restraining order during one of his bad episodes. Ray, the gas station owner, emerged with the parts Jake had paid for. The elderly man nodded at Marcus with quiet respect. "Marcus does good work. Sometimes folks leave him a few dollars. He never asks for it, but he never turns it down either." As the sun dipped lower, Marcus made the final adjustments. The Harley roared to life, its engine purring with renewed strength. Jake's face split into a genuine smile. "Brother, you just saved my ride. What do I owe you for labor?" Marcus stood, wiping his hands on an old rag. "Nothing. You paid for parts. That's enough." "Nothing?" Jake's expression hardened with determination. "Man, you just spent 2 hours fixing my bike. You've got to let me pay you something." Marcus shook his head. "You're riding for fallen veterans. I knew a lot of those guys. Consider it my contribution to their memory." Jake pulled out his wallet anyway, extracting several bills. When Marcus tried to refuse, Jake pressed them into his calloused hands. "At least take this for dinner. And here." He pulled a card from his vest pocket. "This is my number. You ever need anything, you call me. I mean it." Marcus accepted reluctantly, nodding his thanks. He watched as Jake mounted his Harley, the engine responding beautifully to his touch. "Where are you staying?" Jake asked, already knowing the answer from Marcus's appearance. "Hope House Shelter, about 2 miles that way," Marcus gestured east. "When there's room. When there's not, I got a spot under the overpass." Jake nodded slowly, committing the information to memory. "Hope House. Got it." He extended his hand, and Marcus shook it firmly. "Thank you, brother. Seriously. You've got a gift. Seems a shame it's going to waste out here." After Jake rode away, Marcus used the money for a hot meal at the diner next door, his first sit-down meal in a week. The waitress, recognizing him as a regular, served him without the judgment he'd grown accustomed to seeing in people's eyes. That night, Marcus lay on his bunk at Hope House, surrounded by 30 other men whose lives had taken similar downward turns. He didn't know that 200 miles south, Jake Morrison was telling his motorcycle club about the homeless veteran who'd fixed his Harley for free. Didn't know that Jake was making phone calls, sending texts, posting on social media groups dedicated to veteran causes. Didn't know that he'd just planted a seed that would grow into something extraordinary. 3 weeks passed. Marcus settled back into the rhythm of survival, sweeping Ray's gas station for small change, accepting the occasional odd job, stretching every dollar until it screamed. He'd forgotten about Jake Morrison and the Harley, another brief moment of purpose in a sea of empty days. Then came Saturday morning, and everything changed. Marcus was sitting outside Hope House, the shelter where Director Patricia Reeves ran a tight but compassionate ship for 75 homeless men. He was helping sort donated clothes when he heard it, the distant rumble of motorcycle engines. Not one or two, but many. The rumble grew louder, a rolling thunder that made other residents emerge from the building. Marcus stood, confusion knitting his brow as the sound intensified. Then, around the corner, they appeared. Motorcycles, dozens of them. Then more. The street began to fill with Harleys, their riders in leather vests, helmets reflecting the morning sun. They kept coming, an endless stream of chrome and horsepower, until the entire block was packed with bikes. Marcus's heart began to race, old combat instincts flaring. Too many people, too much noise. He took a step back toward the building when he saw Jake Morrison dismounting from the lead bike. "Marcus Webb," Jake's voice carried over the idling engines. "Get over here, brother." On trembling legs, Marcus walked toward him, aware that every shelter resident and passerby had stopped to watch. "Jake, what's going on?" Jake's grin was enormous. "Remember when I said to call if you needed anything?" He gestured to the assembled bikers. "Well, I called in some favors instead." A woman dismounted from the bike next to Jake's, removing her helmet to reveal silver hair and kind eyes. "Mr. Webb, I'm Susan Torres, president of the Rocky Mountain Veterans Motorcycle Club. Jake told us what you did for him." Word spread through the veteran biker community. Marcus looked around at the sea of faces, many bearing the same weathered look he saw in his own mirror. "I don't understand. You fixed Jake's bike for free when you had nothing," Susan continued. "Asked for nothing in return. That kind of service mentality. It's what we're about, so we decided to return the favor." Another biker stepped forward, a man with sergeant stripes tattooed on his forearm. "Name's Tommy Reeves. Did 2 tours in Afghanistan. We heard you were living in a shelter, brother. That ain't right. Not for someone who served." "We took up a collection," Susan said. She handed Marcus an envelope. "There's $15,000 in there. 500 bikers, most of them veterans, all contributed." Marcus's hand shook as he opened the envelope, his vision blurred with tears he'd thought dried up years ago. "I can't. This is too much." "That's not all," Jake interrupted gently. "Tommy's brother owns a custom motorcycle shop in Aurora. He's offering you a job, full-time mechanic position, benefits included, housing assistance to get you into an apartment." The world tilted. Marcus grabbed Jake's shoulder to steady himself. "Why? Why would you do this?" "Because you're one of us," Tommy said simply. "And we take care of our own. We should have found you sooner, but we found you now. That's what matters." Patricia Reeves emerged from Hope House, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, is this really happening? The money isn't just for him," Susan added. 10,000 is for Marcus personally to help him get back on his feet. The other 5,000 is a donation to Hope House to help other veterans living here." A cheer erupted from the shelter residents who had gathered. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't process the magnitude of what was happening. His legs gave out and he sank to his knees on the sidewalk, the envelope clutched to his chest. Jake knelt beside him. "You gave me back my dignity that day, Marcus. You didn't see a customer or a paycheck. You saw a fellow vet who needed help and you gave it freely. Let us return that gift." Around them, the 500 bikers began dismounting. They carried boxes, care packages, toiletries, clothes, food. Some carried job applications from veteran-friendly businesses. Others had information about VA services, mental health resources, housing programs. "We're not just here for you," Susan explained as Marcus struggled to his feet. "We're here for all of them." She gestured to the shelter. Every veteran in there deserves better. We can't fix everything, but we can make a dent. For the next 3 hours, the street outside Hope House became a festival of community and compassion. Bikers shared stories with shelter residents. Job offers were extended. Connections were made. Several other residents received job opportunities. Others got appointments scheduled with VA counselors. Tommy Reeves pulled Marcus aside. "Shop's waiting for you Monday morning if you want it. My brother needs a good mechanic, and Jake says you're the best he's seen. Pay's competitive, and there's an apartment above the shop available. Rent-free for the first 3 months while you get settled." Marcus wiped his eyes, unable to stop the tears. "I've been trying to climb out of this hole for 3 years. I'd given up. Thought this was just how things would be until—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Until nothing," Jake said firmly. "This is your new beginning, brother. All you did was fix my bike and refuse payment. That simple act of kindness reminded all of us, what service really means. Not looking for recognition or reward, just doing what needs to be done because it's right." As the sun climbed higher, Marcus found himself surrounded by kindred spirits. Men and women who understood combat's lingering shadows, who knew the struggle of returning to a world that had moved on without them. They shared phone numbers, resources, promises of continued support. "This won't solve everything," Susan said honestly. "You'll still have hard days. PTSD doesn't disappear because things get better financially. But you won't face those days alone anymore. We've got your back." Patricia called Marcus into her office that afternoon, after the bikes had rumbled away but before the day's miracle had fully sunk in. "I've been running this shelter for 12 years, she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've never seen anything like what happened today. You changed lives, Marcus, not just your own." "I just fixed a bike," Marcus said, still dazed. "No." Patricia shook her head. "You showed compassion when you had every reason to be bitter. You shared your gift freely when you had nothing to spare. That's the kind of man people want to help. That's the kind of man who deserves a second chance." Marcus started work at Reeves Custom Cycles the following Monday. His hands, so uncertain in most aspects of life, found their confidence again around engines and chrome. He moved into the small apartment above the shop, his first real home in 3 years. But more than the job or housing, Marcus had found something he'd lost in the desert years ago: purpose. And through that simple act of fixing a stranger's motorcycle, he'd discovered a truth that would reshape his understanding of community. Sometimes the help we give freely returns to us multiplied, in ways we could never imagine. The story spread beyond Denver, beyond Colorado. News outlets picked it up, sharing the tale of 500 bikers who converged on a homeless shelter to lift up a veteran who'd helped one of their own. It became a rallying cry for veteran support organizations, a reminder that those who served deserved communities that served them in return. 6 months later, Marcus stood in that same parking lot where he'd met Jake. But everything had changed. He had keys in his pocket, to his apartment, to the shop, to a future he'd thought lost forever. His daughter had reached out after seeing him on the news, tentative but willing to rebuild their relationship. And on that cool evening, watching the sun set over Denver, Marcus understood that healing doesn't always come from grand gestures or perfect solutions. Sometimes it comes from simply showing up, offering what you can, and trusting that kindness creates ripples extending far beyond what we can see. The Harley he'd fixed that day had carried more than Jake Morrison to his memorial ride. It had carried a message that would return to Marcus transformed. That service, compassion, and simple human decency still mattered in a world that often seemed to have forgotten those values. 500 bikers had shown up because one man remembered what it meant to serve without expectation, and in doing so, they'd proven that no one who serves their country should ever have to face their battles alone.